So hello everybody out there in Periscope. Happy to join you. I'm Keith Boesen. I'm the director of the Arizona Poison and Drug Information Center at the University of Arizona College of Pharmacy, here with Dan Massey.
How you doing? My name's Dan. I'm helping out Keith with the Poison Center with all the cool rattlesnakes that we're going to talk about today.
So both of us are pharmacists. Both of us graduated from the College of Pharmacy here at the University of Arizona, and we're here to tell you tell you a little bit more about rattlesnakes. So why rattlesnakes? Why is the Poison Center talking about rattlesnakes? Well, in Arizona, it's fortunate that we live in Arizona. We have the largest diversity of rattlesnakes in any other state in the country, meaning one of the roles the Poison Center plays is with treating patients envenomated or bitten by a rattlesnake. So we thought today we'd have all you guys join in and learn a little bit about some of the snakes we have here in the Southwest.
So what we're going to do is actually show you guys some of the species that potentially can cause envenomations here right around the Tucson area. We have up to 9 species within about an hour drive of Tucson. It's pretty amazing. You can't say you can go anywhere else in the world and say I've been envenomated by a potential 9 different species of rattlesnake. Pretty cool.
And that's some of the unique things that we see at the Poison Center when patients are bit by snakes, is because of all of these different varieties, the venom is subtly different between each one.
Absolutely.
So no 2 rattlesnake bites ever really turn out to be the same. So let's look at some of the ones we have here.
Yeah, so why don't you guys come on in so you can see a little better.
And that noise you're hearing in the background is some of these guys rattling.
We got up here, we have a Mojave Rattlesnake up in the top and the lower one here. These are very cool. They like the lower scrubland desert real hot. I mean, they like it, you know, when it's 115, they might not be out, but they're in that type of area. So they'll come out at night when it's that hot, but they like the real low, hot desert. Very cool, get about 4 feet long. So not large, but very, very cool snake. And
classically thought of as to be one of the most dangerous venoms, really across the United States and even throughout the world.
Very good point.
Because of the potential for some of these species having a neurotoxic effect.
And what Keith means by neurotoxic is it can actually cause respiratory depression or paralysis. So it's very unique in the rattlesnake world.
What do we have in this one up here?
We have an Arizona black up here. Hopefully you guys can see it. This species is black, like the name, with some yellow bands. It comes from 7, 8, 9,000 feet up in pine forests. It's really, really cool. It's one of the few snakes that live in actual pine forests.
Pretty good climbers, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, they can definitely be arboreal, meaning they can get up into bushes and stuff. They won't get up into trees too much, but say 3, 4 feet, absolutely.
And this, from the Poison Center standpoint, while rattlesnake bites, since we have such a huge diversity, when somebody's bit by a rattlesnake, really the identification was the snake had a rattle. But we have had a few patients, and specifically one with the Arizona black, that was one of the most severe envenomations we had seen, with incredible bleeding abnormalities.
Yeah, pretty crazy. And then the one you're filming now is called a Western Diamondback. It's the most encountered rattlesnake in Arizona by far. And they're actually, they're not aggressive, they won't come after you, but they'll stand their ground, meaning if you walk up to them, they will strike. But as long as you walk away, this snake will not chase after you, but they are very protective of their bubble, I like to say.
And one of the biggest.
And one of the largest, absolutely. So the Western Diamondback we have up top is a mature adult, probably several years old, if not well over a decade. It's pushing 5 feet long. It's about as big as you'll see them around here. This was caught in the wild this year, actually, by my wife and myself. So it's a very large specimen to pull out of the wild.
And if we move down, let's look at these two guys. These are some of, these, in my opinion, are some of the most beautiful of all the snakes that we have out here in the Southwest. Get a closer look for y'all.
So these are speckled rattlesnakes. These like very, very rocky, steep hillsides, canyons even. You won't find them in the flats at all, only on hillsides that you have to climb up and down. So all the rattlesnakes have what they call a rattle. They're segmented pieces that are loosely fit together, and every time it sheds, it gets one more segment. So that's what you hear in the background, is that rattling. And you can also see the color variation. Sorry, Keith.
I was going to say, you can't really tell. This isn't like aging a tree with however many rattles means that's how old they are. It's really more of an indication of every shed and how healthy they are as far as how they're feeding and eating. But rattlesnakes will break their rattles off, not unlike someone breaking their fingernail. And so the rattle can break in the wild, it can get shorter, and they build it back up as they shed again.
Very good point. So the number of rattles, like Keith said, does not indicate how old the specimen is. It just tells you how many times it shed. Down below, we have a black-tailed rattlesnake.
Absolutely beautiful.
Beautiful snake. What's unique about, well, this and most rattlesnakes is this is a typical rattlesnake that you'll come on across other than a western diamondback. Non-aggressive. He's coiled up, but he's not rattling. Very difficult to get this snake to strike. They're very docile. Again, you don't want to ever approach or handle one, but they're very calm rattlesnake. Very atypical, or meaning not what most people think rattlesnakes are like.
And not that anyone should ever do this in their own home, but certainly we're taking a lot of safety precautions with doing this. Those of you can't see, but we're actually using a selfie stick, keeping a safe distance. All of us are a safe distance away from each one of these snakes, and all of them under lock and key.
Locked room, lock and key cages. So these are very, very respected animals. Then we have some tigers up here to the left. These are very similar to what we were talking about with the speckled rattlesnakes. Their bands are a little more specific. You can see them defined. They look, well, like a tiger, right? So hence the name tiger rattlesnake.
And where would you mostly find these guys?
Again, these guys like steep, rocky hillsides. They don't overlap with the speckled much, but they're a smaller species. They get maybe 2 feet long. They're pretty small. The speckled gets up to about 4, but other than that, they look very similar.
And some of you out there can tell, but we've had that rattle, that constant rattle you hear in the background is coming from that large western diamondback that we saw a moment ago. A lot of these other ones don't seem to be very agitated with our presence.
No, and that's really typical of the majority of snake species, is they will not strike, they will not rattle. Unfortunately, the most common one we encounter is the one that rattles and strikes the most frequent.
And one of the largest.
And one of the largest. So we also have some sidewinders back in this cage here. They're unique. They don't crawl straight forward. They go in an S motion. We don't have the room to show you guys, but it's very cool. And they have horns above their eyes. Very, very unique with the rattlesnakes. And
we can look at another western diamondback down here.
Again, kind of the typical western diamondback pose. Coiled and ready to strike. Very protective of their bubble. So you can see we have 7 different species of rattlesnake here alone. These were all caught by my wife and myself, all right here around Tucson. So it's pretty unique area that we have here, that we have so many different species we can encounter here. It's really very cool if you're into reptiles.
And it's just the and I can't stress enough this variability in their venom is what we'll call it. And certainly, Dan, you've done some really good research in that area, looking at the different venom composition. If you think of the venom as their bowl of soup, and every snake kind of creates their own recipe.
No, very true. Some cause bleeding issues, some cause neurotoxic or respiratory issues, some cause more swelling than others. Keith, you see a lot more envenomations than I would, so you could probably comment on that more.
Let's see if we can get real close look at those horns on that snake. This is the Sidewinder again.
Very cool snake, right? So the Latin name is Crotalus cerastes. Kind of sounds cool, but it actually means the horned one. Very cool name.
So some of the things we've seen, and certainly this is the peak of snake season for us here in the Southwest. We're at the Poison Center at Tucson, which covers most of Arizona outside of the Phoenix area. Average about a bite a day. And we had actually 8 over the long holiday weekend, if you will. And a lot of these patients presenting differently, like Dan was mentioning, with the changes in their venom. So we've had patients that have a lot of localized injuries, so a lot of swelling, bruising from the bleeding abnormalities that are showed. It's kind of a thinning of the blood, if you will. So we've had kids bit on the foot, and the foot swells well above the knee. A lot of purplish colorations, swelling and stuff. Ecchymosis, they call it.
Yeah.
A lot of necrosis, too. Some of the snake venom is a better digestive enzyme, and that's one of the advantages the snakes have.
Absolutely. Help digest it before it even eats it, right?
They swallow their prey whole, so a lot of this digestion can even occur even before they've gotten it into their mouth. That same concept is happening to us when we're bit. So we're worried about, with a lot of these snakes, the things that we worry about is localized injury. So if someone were bit or envenomated on the hand, there's a good risk of an injury to that hand, and they may have long-term problems like loss of range of motion, loss of strength during the healing process.
So I wanted to show one other snake here too that is a non-venomous snake that a lot of people confuse with a venomous snake, a coral snake. This is called a western long-nosed snake. It's red and black, but it is not venomous. So we have a lot of mimics out here. And I really want to stress that these snakes are not to be for pets. You know, these non-venomous ones you can handle, etc. Rattlesnakes we're doing under controlled areas, lock and key, locked room, specifically for the Poison Center for educational purposes with the emergency department, with residents that are coming through. Again, very dangerous animals. You get bit, it's a medical emergency, whether you're in your home, in your center, wherever. You get bit, you're going to the hospital. So they are not to be kept for pets. And again, I just want to stress that we have these in very specific areas, locked containers, locked room, the whole 9 yards.
And that's something we'll talk about more. We're actually going to do a couple more periscopes in the weeks to come. But Dan's absolutely correct. These are absolute emergencies. Rattlesnake bites can run the spectrum. There are certainly times that a rattlesnake will bite someone and actually not inject any venom, and we would refer to that as a dry bite. However, there are still some people, and every year in this country somebody dies from a rattlesnake bite. So the reality is you can be bit by a snake and nothing really happens, or you can die. But most people fall somewhere in the middle, which is what I alluded to earlier with the localized injuries, the severe trauma to the limb, the foot, the hand.
And another thing, it doesn't have to be an actual injection of the fang, correct? I mean, it can actually be a scrape along the skin, and just a scrape, that venom can get into your tissues, into your bloodstream, and it's a hospital emergency. I mean, at all times, we're really taking all the safety concerns with these.
Now, what about baby rattlesnakes? There's a lot of thought out there with baby rattlesnakes, and I know we don't have any kind of true just birth rattlesnakes here, but some of the key things to think about with baby rattlesnakes is, one, they're not born with an actual rattle like these guys are. They have what we call a button, kind of a pre-rattle. So while they shake their tail, they really can't make any noise.
No, and they're born this time of the year. They're born in August, September, so they're actually out there right now. And they have a button, and what that button is, it's actually part of the rattle, and every time it sheds, it gets another segment that's loose. But until it sheds once, you cannot hear it.
But there are also some ideas that baby rattlesnakes are more dangerous than adults.
Very good point. Hear that all the time.
All the time. And what I would describe is they're not necessarily more dangerous, because I would define all of these as being dangerous. They're really just potentially different. The key things to remember is the dose makes the poison. So a baby rattlesnake just doesn't have the venom gland size that it will when it's fully grown. So the amount of venom it can deliver is usually smaller. However, there are some cases where a baby rattlesnake would be more likely to cause bleeding problems than it would be, fully grown, where that digestive enzyme, even the baby to the adult, might actually change its venom.
So basically the venom changes as the snake gets older.
Exactly.
It's quite unique. And it can also depend on its geographical range, so where it came from, what it feeds on. Some of these snakes, like the speckled and the tigers, feed on lizards, almost primarily. Other snakes, larger western, they're feeding on rodents, small rabbits. So it depends on what they're feeding on as well. And that's going to tailor what their venom is specifically used for.
Can they swim?
They can swim. Every snake can swim. It's a little known fact, but every snake can swim right from the get-go. There's not a lot of areas in Arizona to swim, though. Until recently, when we've had some good flash floods, they might be swimming as they're going down a wash. But other than that, there are really not many areas for them to swim. But they can. And yeah, that's pretty much it. So we do have a lot of stuff here, too, for handling. Here's a recent shed, actually, that just came off of one of the rattlesnakes here. This was from yesterday, actually. So you can see they're pretty large. This is off the one behind me here, the blacktail. So pretty cool. And Keith, I believe, don't we have some stuff with the emergency department we're going to bring these guys in and show off? Or was that more for...
Yeah, a lot of what we do, and the reason why we're here and doing this for any reason, is education. A lot of the missions for the Poison Center, obviously the university and the College of Pharmacy, is to educate. We want to teach people to be safe around these things, and that's what we're going to talk about in the future. So a lot of what we've done with Dan and myself is giving lectures, giving presentations, whether it's to the general public, the physicians on treating these patients that come in. That's what it's about, and that's what we're going to talk about in the future. So if you want to learn more about snake safety and what happens when someone's bit, tune in to Periscope next Friday, September 18th at 10 a.m. Tucson time.
Excellent. Put her there.